everything. That resilience means enduring friction without breaking. But true power isn't found in constant resistance. At Black Mental Health Matters, we are redefining the narrative. There is immense strength in softness. There is courage in choosing to heal, in setting down the heavy lifting, and in claiming your peace as a non-negotiable right. We are building the infrastructure for impact. A collective space where the diaspora can find tools, community, and the unshakable permission to slow down, process, and thrive. Your healing is not a luxury, it is the foundation. Join the movement. Let's build a softer, stronger tomorrow together.
All right. We have made it here. It is August 2nd, Black Mental Health Matters. We have a fabulous panel here today to talk about my topic today, which is cultural responsive therapy for Black African Americans, for Blacks, Africans all over the world, really, Pan-African. And we've got a fabulous panel here. I'm glad to be on camera here with Dr. Edward Henderson and Mark Tuggle. Could you two please say some words this morning to greet the audience and to put your voice in the room? Say hello, Mark. I'd love to hear from you.
Peace and blessings, Dr. Robinson and Dr. Henderson. My name is Mark Tuggle. I'm a Black man in the village of Harlem with lived experience. I was diagnosed with mental illness about 31 years ago. And through grace and mercy, God put people in my life to help me with my body, mind, and spirit. And I became an author, an educator, mentor, and talk radio show host. The name of my talk radio show was The Mental Health Mirror with Mark. It's on Saturday afternoons at 1 o'clock in New York City. And on the show, it's a 1-hour live telephone conversation. And we primarily center Black male humanity, and we focus on issues of culture, manhood, and self-care.
Awesome, Mark. Thank you for doing that work and holding it down in New York. Kind of one of the flagship cities of the world, if you ask me. Dr. Henderson, a word from you, sir.
Well, good morning, all. I hope everyone is a little bit familiar with me. I am a PhD candidate in global health. My background is, for the most part, in clinical psychology from my undergrad and research and so on and so forth. And that was driven by serious mental illness in my family. High heredity quotient, dealing with schizophrenia. And that really drew my attention away from where I originally did my Hopkins Fellowship in addiction, etc. But I also discovered, as I'm sure Mark can attest to, that there is a system that drives mental health care in this country that needs to be addressed, particularly for those who are most vulnerable in the African American community. And that's part of the reason where I left from the specific clinical format as a cohort member and PhD candidate in neuropsychology. I left to pursue global health because there's a need to get to the social determinants that are driving the decisions and policies that keep Black men and women and our children from receiving the necessary care for their healing. I could go on, but I'll pull up there.
All right, I feel the passion underneath those words. I appreciate it. And by way of introduction, I'll just say that I'm Marcus Robinson of the Adaptive Terrain Institute, and I do work that really around trying to understand how the human thrives and all the ways in which we thrive, and from the biological to the relational to the civic and civilizational, all rooted in kind of a blend of ancient wisdom that comes out of the kind of the Gara tradition out of Africa, which really connects up with quantum biology of modern science today. So that's kind of like where I'm at with this whole thing. And I'm privileged to have the opportunity to speak with you gentlemen. And Mark, we're just going to jump right into it. And I'm going to give the first question to you. And that question really goes to the definition of what do we really mean when we say culturally responsive therapy? What do we mean in practice beyond just having a Black therapist? What specific approaches or techniques makes it different?
Well, as a man of African descent, our ancestors had to endure centuries of enslavement, brutality, genocide, lynching, dehumanization, terror, rape. We have a whole history of anti-Black racism, capitalism, colonialism, white supremacy mythology. We have to deal with microaggressions every single day. Being Black means different things to different people. And sometimes, being in a space, we may not feel safe talking about what's it like to deal with our culture, to deal with police brutality, to deal with the racism. And so it helps to have someone to partner with who is aware of our history, who can affirm our history, and can provide that space where we can share freely about our lived experience every day, the things that we see, the things that we hear, the things that we feel, the trauma that we've had to endure for centuries. And I think a lot of times when we talk about mental health, we don't talk about the history, the colonial history, the imperialist history, and we just talk about our feelings. But mental health is more than just talking about our feelings. So it really helps to have somebody that we can partner with who really has a deep understanding, a sense of curiosity and inquiry, and someone who can be present, when we share about the hurt and the pain and the trauma of being a Black man in a racist society.
Got it. Man, that's interesting work. Very, very good stuff. Dr. Edwards, what do you see?
Well, I'm going to answer this in two parts. And I'm going to start with the latter. It says, beyond the Black therapist. I want to include that part because it's critical. When you're in the business and around it and you see it, right? You understand that there are not nearly enough African-American psychologists, therapists, counselors in almost every neck of the woods in America. There are so few per capita, per population, right? My mentor comes from NYU, where I went to school for grad school, and the needs that she was overwhelmed with in New York City, for example. My study in Baltimore, DC, and Philadelphia as a Hopkins Fellow was so undermanned because we simply didn't have enough folks who were licensed in the field and had the opportunity to pursue the credentials necessary to be culturally responsive. It matters when you walk in a room and you at least have the opportunity to see someone who reflects your heritage, your image, and what you might perceive as your reality. It is not to say that you can't get that from data or understanding of history, but it is necessary to at least have the opportunity, particularly studies will show when we go into what's called urban America, right? I say it applies to suburbia as well, where you still would like the opportunity to say, hey, I need to see someone who comes from my zip code, at least my community. And I think it is necessary that we have therapy that aligns with those realities. Oftentimes, those outside of our community cannot identify with some of the same challenges that we face due to systemic racism, due to the things which went on, as Mr. Tuggle alluded to, as far as historical things related to slavery and so on. The good Dr. Horace Mann Bond, as I'm sure you are are quite familiar with in your writing there, Dr. Marcus, talked about the challenges of the IQ test, for the U.S. soldier, and basically tried to say that African Americans were inferior and they were only good for being on that front line and taking a bullet versus strategizing how we might go about protecting this union. And what he did was dismantle the measurement of IQ and show that those from the North that had the same exposure scored even higher than the regular Union soldiers. And so that tells us that cultural responsibility is absolutely critical in the treatment of those who may be challenged with any type of mental illness.
Yeah, a lot going on there. Both of you gentlemen said quite a bit here that I had to pull out some notes, so pad and pencil here to keep up with you cats with the depth of what you're sharing here. But I think what I want to pull on a little bit here, and Mark, and invite your voice in to help me sort this out, is that I heard a little bit about this. There's not enough Black therapists to begin with. And that there's an institutional barrier there in some that you named as that also qualify for licensure in the state. And then if you get at the history of licensure and why that came about, how that came about, and who got to play, and how those rules have evolved over time, you'll begin to see that there is a structure, an architecture in there that demands the outcome that we see. The system isn't broken; the system is designed. So that's the piece of it. And then if I do get licensed, well then one of the things I have to do is get thoroughly immersed in the Western model and commit to producing the Western result with the Western methods, with the Western billables, if you want to get paid for it, doing that body of work after without any question of whether you will bring any of the stuff they don't teach in the Western world to the table in the first place, if we don't bring your signature strength. So these are the structural issues that we're trying to dance around, and I just wanted to name that so that we know that we're dancing around a thing as opposed to everything's working perfectly and we just can't get it together. That is not the situation.
Yes. Well stated there, Brother. Absolutely.
Mark, you got a word on that?
Well, yeah. From my understanding, in this country, only 4% of psychologists are Black and 1% of Black men. And quite often, people are taught a Eurocentric way of thinking and being when it comes to partnering with their clients, and so the model does not affirm our culture, our history. There's a spiritual principle in South Africa called Ubuntu. I am because we are. And so the focus is on community and family and spirituality. But quite often in this country, we're focused on the individual alone. And in my opinion, there needs to be a paradigm shift in the way that we go about the whole process of therapy. I believe that anything constructed can be deconstructed. And so I think we need to dismantle the system the way it is, because in my opinion, it was not designed for our liberation or our transformation.
Oh, yeah, you just said a lot, brother. Not designed for our liberation or transformation, which is to say, not designed for us to thrive. Which you got to hear that in 2026 we are living in an environment that is structurally designed with great architecture based on decades and decades, maybe even more lineage of time to perfect the thing, such that it renders us in this condition. That's the design of the system. And when we know that, then we know we're not crazy. So about the mental health thing, you know what I'm saying? So the frame even starts to come loose a little bit, you know, because it's not that I lack health at a certain level. It's that I am a healthy individual and I am in a context that is hostile to this system thriving. Now, when you say you want to, it's more than beyond the black. I want to go here just for a second, beyond having a black therapist. Because you want to have a black therapist who's rooted in their experience, who's rooted in their in the knowledge of the collective experience, who has felt sense stakes in the proposition of thriving in the face of the structural misalignment. Like they gotta first come from there. Hey, I understand what you're going through. You work in this system that's working against you, and this is the baddest system ever devised in human history. This is America.
Yeah, that's a powerful point. If I may, Dr. Robson, it goes back to the very foundation of what's taught in quote unquote mental health and psychology and responsive therapy. None of it features any of our great architects of mental health and wellness and psychology. You know, there's no talk of Francis Sumner or any of the other folks there, and Welsing and so on, or the Dr. Horace Mann Vaughn, as I talked about. You learn about it from, you used to start with Freud, and you work through Carl Jung, and you work through Adler, and so many of the others there, Maslow, all brilliant men in their own right, but a lot of times some of these folks were not considering our plight, what was going on in our world, in our community. Only later would you see folks along the lines of Cole Rogers who might consider what's going on in the African American world or Latino population, what's going on with the Native American. But they simply ignored the very existence of our mental health and well-being being a factor in our overall health there, much less those who belong to the fabric of civilization and the diaspora, as it would be, and the contributions of our culture to all of mankind, and how it was relegated to mere history. And I would say misappropriated history often, right? It was they adopted the pieces they wanted to adopt in our very books and study, because history is fundamentally important to mental health and how it is laid out and how it's taught. And so how can you have the pillars, the necessary to build an individual who is suffering from mental health if they don't have anything but the negative history, and they only know about transatlantic slavery and for years Columbus discovered America, etc., versus the truth and the real history that we were in America all along, right? You know, without understanding that the DNA that has proven, as far as cultural responsibility, the very DNA of this entire planet starts in West Africa, as a Nobel Swiss scientist found, which I think it's shocking when we have the science and the history to talk about the very roots of our civilization and not show the honor that is due to our history and bringing that into what is called culturally responsive therapy.
Thank you, Dr. Henderson. I also wanted to just add briefly, it would benefit brothers to know about people like Dr. Joseph Wilson, Dr. Amos Wilson, Naeem Akbar, Joy DeGreen, B.B. Moore Campbell, Queen Afua. We have our own heroes and sheroes, and that's who we should be learning from. And, you know, their books and their articles should be in the room when we sit down with the culturally responsive therapist. And if we're not aware that information should be given to us so we can study and learn about how this all began, so we can begin the process of healing from an African-centric perspective.
Now, Mark, let me ask: was that, pardon me, was that knowledge of those authors, heroes and sheroes, was that given to you as a child, or was it something you arrived at in your adult life? Was that built into your family structure?
It was not, and today it can be part of our ecosystem from the very beginning. So that's the challenge that we have, is to teach the young about the men and women who came before us, who laid a path towards healing.
I ask that because it's so critical with what's going on, as you talked about, Dr. Marcus, with 2026. They're pulling the books that relate to our history or our authors, right? They're essentially washing them off the shelves, out of the curriculum in elementary, high school, universities, graduate level, right? So if those basics that have been around forever that talk about our stories are being taken out, how do we get to what Mr. Markle, as an educator and author, is talking about, unless we start in the home and we get those necessary tools for our own culture and understanding and learning and healing, right? And I think that's a powerful point you make there, Mark.
Mark and Ed, you both are really putting your finger on. I want to draw off a piece of current events to kind of make elaborate on this point around who gets to determine what is the true story of America and how things really went down. And so we have some firm shared knowledge. Okay, so as you probably know now that I've heard in the news that the president, the White House, demanded that the Smithsonian put up a sign at the front of the Smithsonian to say that the American story is mistold here. There's mistakes here. That's a fact. That sign is up, and it was forcing Lonnie Bunch, a Black man, the leading archivist, museum historian in the country, the arbiter of the American story. Okay, he's been pressured to retire, trying to push him out so they can name the Smithsonian the Trump Smithsonian. Okay, and take out everything that has to do with slavery as we truly understand it, as opposed to its robbery of identity, narrative, history, language, culture, and the complete dehumanizing of a people. It doesn't want to say that it did that. And it doesn't want to say that it is the author of that, and that is the source code of its own historical lineage. And this is a Black man under attack. So so it's not just a white leader attacking a Black leader. It is the apex node of a civilization attacking the apex node of a civilization's highest scribe on truth. And when you vanquish that, you take away all scaffolding of the deconstruction, because even if you try to deconstruct their version of history, your deconstruction of fiction, that you can't get to a resolution that way. So why am I bringing that up? I wanted to hear from you to see how. See if you got a sensibility about how the changing of the story, how these stories get embedded in us, shapes our mental health, and that if you live in the context of a story that denies you, what impact that has on you, and do you encounter that in your work?
Well, I'll take a part of that, and I think it goes back to what we were just talking about with the fantastic point that Mr. Tuggle was referring to, as far as understanding that there is wisdom, knowledge that needs to be passed down and handed down from those that came before us, our ancestors, our chiefs, our doctors, our therapists, our elders, and so on and so forth. The quilt that forms the African American community and the diaspora is critical to our survival in 2026. We have become detached from our own history, and the fact that it is being eliminated from there has been a consistent battle over what books. I have a daughter in school, right? So what's she reading? What is allowable? What's real? What truths are there? To your question, Dr. Upson, as far as what is relevant to our story and to the history of this country, I'm a firm believer that is necessary to discuss the atrocities as much as it is necessary to celebrate America 250, which is, without me going on a tangent, but to your question, America 250, but yet they say and they teach us that there was 400 years related to the transatlantic slave trade. How does that match up? The math doesn't work. And it's not even 400 years. If you go back to the Spanish, and the conquistadors and Portuguese history, it's well over 400 years if you do the real research. But it certainly isn't America 250, because we were planning and building this country without receiving our just share, our just reward, and not even at this point with all the historical knowledge that we have, still not being recognized as the architects of this powerful democracy and union. I won't speak to what's going on right now in D.C. All I can say is we can get out and vote. And I was very proud of the Smithsonian standing behind Lonnie and his efforts to do the right thing and be historically accurate and culturally responsive to your question there. But I will digress and allow Mr. Tuggle to chime in on.
Mr. Tuggle.
Yes, sir.
So what's your view on the matter?
Mark, did you part there as far as the?
Yeah. So Mark, let's do this. Let's take the next question. I appreciate it. This says what are the biggest barriers for keeping Black men from seeking or staying in therapy, and how cultural responsive care can address them directly? What are the biggest barriers that keep us from seeking or staying in therapy, and how can we address them?
What are the biggest barriers for keeping or staying in therapy?
Yes, what are the barriers to keeping us from seeking therapy?
Well, James Baldwin says that not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it's faced. And, therapy means different things to different people. There's art therapy, there's book therapy, there's dance therapy, there's hip hop therapy, there's comedy therapy, there's music therapy, there's yoga therapy. So there's different ways for a client to partner with a mental health professional. And then, some brothers are not employed, some are not insured, some are not interested. And it takes courage to ask for help. It takes a lot of courage to ask for help. And some brothers have asked for help, but they are exhausted with the system and the way things are structured. Today, you can see somebody by phone, you can see someone over the internet. You don't always have to go in and sit down face to face. But I think, one of the challenges is to provide a space where, Black men feel safe culturally, where his manhood is being celebrated and not just tolerated. It helps to have a space where Black men um, can express himself freely without being judged or pathologized, or even misunderstood. You know, that's a pretty interesting question.
You know, so Mark, you really landed on something very powerful here, and it really touches the next question. So I wonder what you think about it. Is this how do concepts of masculinity and strength and not showing up, not showing up like weakness, right? How does that show up in the therapy room? These ideas that for both the person seeking therapy or the therapist, okay, how does that play out? These concepts around Black male masculinity.
Well, I think we need to deconstruct this heteronormative patriarchy system that we have to deal with, because the Black male spectrum is very wide. There's different ways for Black men to experience love, to express love. There's different ways for Black men to express their identity in terms of their sexuality, their manhood. Personally, I don't like the word masculine. I don't think the word masculine serves our culture, our history, our spirituality. I think it's time to use something else. I don't like the term toxic masculinity. I think it's rooted in anti-Black racism. We talk about toxic masculinity. We don't talk about Asians or Italians or Germans or Russians. Why is toxic masculinity only assigned to Black men? So in terms of masculinity, no Black man can define masculinity for all Black men. I respect Malcolm X, but he can't speak for everybody, you know? So I think we have to provide spaces where Black men can feel comfortable enough to decide what masculinity means or doesn't mean to them, instead of us trying to impose our beliefs and values on the whole entire race of people.
Got it. Dr. Henderson, your thoughts?
Sure, and I think the good Professor Tuggle there covered a lot of ground there. So I'm going to take it from a different perspective. I think stigma is an overwhelming challenge for dealing with the overall challenges that we face, and we're going to seek therapy, as well as the challenges that have us coined and phrased in what would be called strength, or not showing weakness, or masculinity, and so on and so forth. The stigma is still existing in 2026, where it is something that you are not a strong man, a Black man, as it will, that can represent not only yourself, but your family and your children if you're seeking health. Now, do I think that's changed? We have the data that supports that those who are what would be considered middle America or middle class, et cetera, and beyond, are becoming more engaged in therapies, traditional and non-traditional rather. However, when you talk about the most vulnerable populations, those who are under the poverty line are right there at it, and the middle class is continually being pushed down towards that, as we see what's going on with unemployment, what's going on with those who are uninsured, which brings me to another, my second point, the ability to receive care, and everything from the traditional, the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare, to those who have some sort of insurance, does not adequately cover therapy and mental health. A lot of therapists and my peers, before I left that field to pursue research and the scientific endeavors in order to, chase down a cure, we were faced with, wow, the guidelines and the policies and laws are trying to eliminate being able to bill for healthcare services that are done online. or of that on in person. They want to cut it in half. They want to cut it by 25%. And so the cost of doing that business, the cost of carrying the adequate insurance, and so on and so forth, doesn't make it feasible for a psychologist, a therapist, or psychiatrist, a counselor to do treatments and therapies without being able to bill it at full cost and rate. Whereas there's also the challenges that they're facing with being on site, being a part of an HMO or a PPO, and all the structures there that are really, really trying to squeeze out the individual practices and make you all part of one big homogeneous mix there, where they're all under this umbrella at a very controlled cost. And in order to stay as a private and offer those services, who exactly can afford that, right? The most vulnerable populations cannot. They cannot swipe their card that they have from Medicare or Medicaid, et cetera, and say, I need to see a therapist, because that doctor no longer takes it. And often cases they can't afford it. Now, are they doing pro bono? Are we going into the community centers? Are we working with our churches, et cetera? Yes, in some cases, but in many cases they simply aren't. And you have to pay out of pocket for to receive care, and they just can't afford it. And that is a tremendous problem facing America right now, because until we get what's going on with the healthcare system under some type of mandate, which requires protections for those who offer treatment and therapies for mental health and illness, versus the what I would call almost an attack on the ability to offer that care at a reasonable, feasible rate, where you also can keep your doors open and pay the insurance necessary. Until we get those things done, which is why we work on the political determinants of health to address policy, the social determinants of health, before you even get to a place of crisis and needing mental health. We have to go back and really get a hold of the system which is surrounding healthcare and mental health, and that is one of the key determinants from Black male and all minorities from receiving healthcare, because it's just not built into their insurance anymore, and it's been cut. Like music has been cut out of physical ed's cut out of my daughter's school. They're like, you don't have to take it, but you can pay for it, but it's not part of the curriculum anymore. So if you want to send an extra $1,000, we'll pay someone to do it. It's shocking when we know for a fact that if you give the basic math, English, sciences, but if you have music, right, to Professor Tuggle's conversation about music therapy, which is very popular. I have an amazing program at SCAD here in conjunction with Emory and also at NYU that has really, really reached a lot of folks that they otherwise can't reach, who have serious chronic mental health issues. They're taking music out of the equation when it is a powerful tool for healing and learning. But you got to pay for it, and the healthcare system is no different.
Dr. Henderson, both of you, Professor Tuggle, you put a lot on the table here, and I want to kind of unpack a little bit of it with you, and go back to some of the stuff. And this business about the system design fault that you're discussing here, Dr. Henderson. You're describing how the system actually works, and what you can pay for, and who can pay for it, and who's got what, and all of the, how it affects providers and their needing for insurance. And you're talking about system design failure, and the design doesn't allow for a resolution, only oscillation between the extremes. Sometimes I have the money, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I have the card, sometimes it pays, sometimes it doesn't. You just and you oscillate between the two based on your particular circumstance. That's being left to your own devices. That's rugged individualism. And what's missing, and it's missing so much that it's missing, is the spirit of Ubuntu. So we talk about culturally responsive culture. So what's Ubuntu really? That is that you and I are inextricably connected in the mutual garment of destiny. That we are, we are, that I am. We are that I am. That I can't be without you. Right? All of this kind of stuff. So when you lack that spirit, okay, you can also lack the spirit of coming to you when I got a problem. Well, I'm gonna come to you. And so let's just say I was in an Ubuntu society and I simply didn't act on it. That's one thing. But to be in a rugged individualist society that says that not only do I not come to you for help, but I compete with you for everything. So one of the reasons why I don't come to you, like Dr. Henderson, one of the reasons why cats like you don't come to me is because you got a doctorate too. And that rugged individual thing does a thing on us that if we didn't have the recognition that a fool has a lawyer, is his own lawyer in court, right? Only a fool is his own lawyer, right? Right? So then, but we don't understand. See, but when you lack Ubuntu, that's foreign. When you lack Ubuntu from the root. Like from, you say, how young, you going back to is it taught in the family? So, and that Ubuntu root, that was one of the roots that got pulled with slavery. That's the one that needs to be reinstalled by you and me. And when you say, and at the level of family, because Dr. Henderson, when you say that, you're coming back to the solution, which is that the profession. If you got to go to professional help, then you are really in trouble. Then you have missed a lot of the buffers along the way. Like, by the time you get to getting arrested and going to jail, you have missed a lot of civil society work. You understand what I'm trying to say? The first barrier is to follow the rules of your family. The next barrier is to follow the rules of your elders. The next barrier is to follow the rules of the designated leader in the civics field. The next is to follow the official. By the time you get to I got to take your butt to jail and charge you with you've traversed all of the barriers of buffering against coming to the exclusion. Yeah. Right? We don't have that in the mental health thing because the system is already designed to, like you said, by the time you get to third grade, we know where to put how many beds to make. By the time your butt turns 20 years older. Yeah.
You make a point, a powerful point there, and it goes back to what Mr. Tuggle was talking about. We simply don't have our ancestry to lean on as that buffer to insulate once we leave outside our doors, right? And if you look at who's leading our families, right, the attack on Middle America and particularly African Americans, right? What was the number one thing they did? They went to the federal government and said, "We're going to cut." And it was unfortunately spot on if you wanted to hurt the African American family, because most of the women who represent middle class in our culture and people, many of them were employed in some way, shape, or form in the federal government. My mother retired from the federal government, for example. I'm a living proof of that. So
tell the truth about it. I hear where you go. Tell the truth about it.
Yeah. So this reality and this strategic effort to push back, not just our opportunity to access mental health, but to really all but destroy the financial, fiscal necessary foundation for thriving and for growth in a society by eliminating their means with which to have the fundamental basics of housing, food, and those things which we are inalienably guaranteed as Americans. It is real. It is happening, and I feel like to both your points, we must again rely on the things which have been taken away from our culture and the things that we don't know, right? That have not been taught, that have not been discussed. And oftentimes, I can tell you from one side of the family that I had married into, to from where my family came from being a guy out of the North and marrying here in the South. They weren't particularly interested in some of the things that we might be talking about as far as the ancestry and the doctrine and Ubuntu and so on, and so many of the other things which insulate us and prepare us for some of the, not only the fight that we have physically, but the things that we deal with spiritually in this world that are critical to our mental health. And so I just think it's necessary for us to deal with the historical and generational trauma that we have, and many of the things that you talked about there, Dr. Robinson, right, and that Professor Tuggle talked about, relate to our spirituality that help insulate us when we go outside our doors.
Yeah, yeah. Professor Tuggle, could you speak to that? Because this business about understanding who we are, where we come from, and our own luminaries, that when we follow their example, we get a better outcome. Can you speak a little bit to that?
Well, I think Dr. Henderson mentioned how important it is to start in the home. I mean, I've got 3 brothers and 3 sisters. I'm the 5th out of 7, and both of my parents are transitioned, but we never discussed mental health in my family. I'm 65 years old, and so I never learned what mental health is and how it impacts my relationships to stress, the conflict, and relationships I have with other people. And I think, mental health is something that can be taught in school, as young as the age of 9. It could be a curriculum. This is not, we talk about math, or we talk reading and history, we can talk about mental health as well. But in our own community, I believe it's important to have community-based approaches to mental health. And so something as simple as having your own support group, you can start your own support group, 3, 5, 7 of your homies, meet once a week, once a month, you sit in a circle and you chop it up. You don't need insurance, you don't need a job, you don't have to dress a certain way. Just get together and learn how to connect and be of service to each other. You can do it in person, you can do it over the phone, you can do it virtually. And there's so many other ways to engage in the healing process. Reverend Dana Rose taught me that healing can never take place in isolation. Healing can only take place in community. And so it's important to have that community-based approach where our spirituality is affirmed, whether it's Buddha or Islam or Christianity or Yoruba, whatever it is, those beliefs and values and principles need to be affirmed in those spaces so we can feel whole and we can feel free.
Got it. Very, very spot on. So we got about 10 more minutes. I just wanted to just deepen this just a little bit here. This business about the cultural masculinity thing. So Ubuntu, I mean, you understand that term, right? Okay, so and I'm trying to attach this to masculinity, and I want to use an adjacent culture to which I'm immersed in to make the distinction. So in Hawaiian culture, which is basically Polynesian, which is a kind of African diaspora cosmology, and that's what it is. And so they have the aloha spirit. Aloha equals the same as Ubuntu. Ubuntu and aloha have almost synonymous meaning. They in other words, they mean heavy overlap in their meaning. Us together, you, me, my identity is, and my thriving is dependent upon you. The village of the we provides for the needs of each, and we all are responsible for contributing into it. This is the aloha spirit, okay? And so watch this. If you look at the Hawaiian men in today's society, and you talk about, say, like in their sports, which is where you see the masculinity, play out the most, and say in football, guess what they call their state football team? Rainbow Warriors, full of aloha, full of, and they get out there, haka, just like the Samoans and the other ones, they crazy out there about that in terms of being all of the martial stuff, all of the stuff you normally consider in the male domain of experience, and yet they're soft, sweet, and their ability to navigate across a variety of social identities, sexual orientations, and whatnot, and not have it mean a thing other than that's brother. That's the kind. I got aloha with him. It's that kind of thing. But again, they were only captured just 50 years ago. 50 years ago, they only been a state, right? Okay, and then captured 100 years ago, and not in slavery, because you can see how their world did differently, so they retain that masculinity that allows them to be soft and deep and wonderful and spiritual and whatnot, but also, don't mess with my mama, all at the same time. And so I'm saying that this is, as an example, that this may a return to our deeper ancestral ways, not as religion, not as a turn away from modernity, but rather a recollection, to remember, to bring it back into the bone, into the body. This business about, man, I belong to you. You belong to me. What happens to you, even from a distance, I care about. The systems that oppress you are the same systems that oppress me, and I want to collaborate with you to help us both emancipate ourselves from that system, so that we can walk separately from the system, yet be in the same geography with the system. So that's what the opportunity is. Can you and I, as Black men, join each other in such a way where Ubuntu arises in the ways in which we raise our children, which we care for our women, which we care for each other, which we make decisions in the commons about how we will operate on common ground, so that I don't have to trigger your fear response that's been so highly tuned by an experience that makes you have to be fully aware of where the lightning is coming from. Tomorrow, not even today, not even this book. You got to be that smart. Yes. So that hyper alertness. So what am I saying here? I think what the kinds of wisdom that the Professor Tuggle was speaking to, that's inherent in the exemplars that he was naming, that and then all the unnamed, unknowable heroes that we can't know and don't know because we're cut off from them. Can you hear that? There's a certain cut offness that I am, that you are, from the richness of those souls. That once we get a glimpse of them, once we get a word from them, it changes us in a way. It's a signal to us that, even Mark Tuggle, even Ed Henderson, even Mark Robinson can stand on their own 2 feet as a Black man. And that's a beautiful thing. That's what I'm hoping that we continue to strive towards. Open the floor for folks to say some final words.
Well, I will re-emphasize what you just shared so eloquently there, Dr. Robinson. It is necessary, and what Professor Tuggle talked about, to get back to some of our ancestral roots without me restating what you've said so wonderfully. I will say, I come from a standpoint of, though I may have a background in research and science and so on, and you know, I believe the Black church is fundamental to our survival and our restoration. Does it have its issues and flaws, and can you hold it up to the light, and can you poke it, et cetera, et cetera? But I will push back and say, historically, and we have so many different, opportunities to engage what you may call as the higher power in your faith in God. You may not call it Christ as I do, but I think it is fundamental for the African American man and his household and his family to return to the Black church. And I think that it is something that has crippled our society with how we've watered down what our faith has meant to us as a people. And I think it has impacted our mental health considerably, because it isn't simply what you got out of the Bible. How critical is it now to know history and know the origins of mankind versus what might be in your local church of the gentleman with that was painted by one of the great artists of all time, and I believe it says it was cousin or friend, versus just knowing history and geography, and then tying that into who you are and your own self-esteem and awareness, and understanding the opportunities for the entire world to discover our true place in society, and then to teach your children those very values that we've talked about. It's a powerful opportunity and message to expand on their well-being, their mental health, their self-esteem, their ability to do any and everything, versus what they are bombarded by this nothingness of what we see in social media, and then what we see on the news, where they're still being murdered. Or maybe he didn't drown, but I'll leave that for another conversation. But the realities are, there's an awareness that you got out of our church. And you go to where you find the message fits your spirituality, your soul, your message. Maybe that doctor didn't work for you. Maybe that barber doesn't work for you. You go to where you fit in, but there's got to be a spiritual foundation. I think it's one of the greatest tricks against not only our people, but all of mankind, to step away from their faith and worship. And I think that cornerstone is necessary to say, hey, this is the word. However, you need to be comfortable in going to seek mental health and going to see someone who's a professional who can help you with those challenges that you're facing with your mental health. And a lot of that came from the support and the gathering of our churches. And I'm not even going to go into the political ramifications and how critical it was to destroy that church. That is the foundation of the African Americans in this country. And we have so many different denominations and this and that. So I'll pull up there.
Well, Professor Tuggle, you get the last word. We got about a minute or so, unless they let us go over. So go ahead and take the last word. It's on you.
Well, I just wanted to say it's an honor and privilege to speak with both of you gentlemen. I'm not sure how it happened, but I'm not a professor. but thank you for addressing me as Professor Tuggle. But when you mentioned the Black church, I think it's also important to mention the mosque or the synagogue or the temple, because there are different places where we gather in terms of our faith and what we believe, what we value, what we hold dear to our heart, body, mind, and spirit. And those institutions are sacred, and they should be a part of our healing and our wholeness. And that should be part of our culture as well.
Wow.
Well said.
That's
Well said.
beautifully said and so well timed. Now, I'm not the arbiter of when this thing actually stops, but I think it's I'm at 59 minutes and 58 seconds. So I thought we were only on for an hour. So
That's it. That's it.
yeah.
We've given all that we have, and I think it's been a joy